The stars had never looked so peaceful to Captain Jake Morrison as they did from the bridge of the UNS Horizon. He stood near the large viewing window, watching the blue and white swirls of a distant planet rotate slowly in space. This was what he loved most about his job, the quiet moments between discoveries, when the universe felt calm and full of wonder. "Captain, we're getting signals from the surface," said Lisa Bennett from her science station. She was the ship's lead scientist, a woman who could speak with aliens better than most humans could speak with each other. Her voice always carried excitement when they found something new. Jake walked over to look at her screens. The signals were clear and organized, not like the random noise that came from empty space. This meant intelligent life lived on the planet below them. After 20 years of exploring space, Jake still felt his heart beat faster when they found new friends among the stars. "What kind of signals are they sending?" Jake asked, leaning over Lisa's shoulder to see the data better. "They look like mathematical patterns," Lisa said, pointing to the green lines dancing across her screen. "Very complex but peaceful. No weapon signatures, no military formations. They seem curious about us, not afraid." This made Jake smile. In all his years leading first contact missions, he had learned that peaceful species usually stayed peaceful. The dangerous ones showed their weapons first and asked questions later. These aliens seemed to be the good kind. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. "Let's say hello properly." The communications officer, a young man named Peter Collins, worked at his controls for several minutes. Then he nodded to Jake. "Channel open, sir. They can hear us now." Jake cleared his throat and spoke in the calm, friendly voice he always used when meeting new species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship UNS Horizon. We come in peace and friendship. We would like to learn about you and share knowledge." The response came back quickly, but in a language that sounded like wind chimes mixed with ocean waves. Lisa's computers worked fast to translate the meaning. After a few moments, words appeared on the screen. "Welcome, travelers from the stars. We are the melody of the third world of our sun. We have watched your ship approach with great interest. Will you visit us on our world? We have much to share." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They all nodded with excitement. Making new friends was why they had joined the exploration service. It never got old, no matter how many times they did it. "We would be honored to visit your world," Jake replied. "We will send a small group down to meet with you." 3 hours later, Jake found himself walking through a city that looked like it was made of music and light. The melody were tall, thin beings with skin that changed colors when they spoke. Their buildings curved and twisted like frozen songs, and soft music played from crystals growing in their gardens. Lisa walked beside him, her recording devices capturing everything they saw. She was smiling so wide that Jake thought her face might hurt. This was exactly the kind of discovery that made her love her job. "Captain," said one of the Melody leaders, a being who called himself Harmony of Seven Winds, "we have heard stories of your species from others who travel the stars. They say humans are good mediators, that you help solve problems between different peoples. We try our best," Jake said honestly. "We believe that most conflicts come from misunderstanding. When species take time to really listen to each other, they usually find ways to get along." Harmony of Seven Winds made a sound like bells laughing. "This is wisdom. We have had troubles with our neighbors, the rock people of the fourth world. They think we waste time with beauty and music. We think they care only for mining and building. Perhaps humans could help us understand each other better." Jake felt the familiar warmth that came when he could help solve a problem without anyone getting hurt. This was what humanity did best in the galaxy. They listened, they understood, and they helped others find common ground. "We would be happy to help," Jake said. "But first, let us learn more about both of your peoples. Understanding takes time." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Ambassador Paul Richards sat in his office on the space station called Harmony Point. This was the center of galactic government, where representatives from hundreds of different species worked together to keep peace among the stars. Paul had been doing this job for 15 years, and he had seen amazing things. Wars ended with handshakes instead of weapons. Trade agreements that made everyone richer. Scientific discoveries shared freely between species who used to be enemies. His assistant, a human woman named Carol Murphy, brought him his daily reports. "The Zephyrian Council wants to discuss new mining rights in the Vega system," she said. "And the Crystalline Union is asking for help with their population growth problems." Paul nodded as he read through the files. These were the kinds of problems he enjoyed solving. Complex but peaceful, requiring patience and creativity instead of force. Humans had become known throughout the galaxy as the species you called when you needed a fair solution to a difficult problem. Schedule meetings with both groups, Paul told Carol, and see if we can get the Vegan Federation involved in the mining discussion. They have experience with sustainable resource extraction. As Carol left to make the arrangements, Paul looked out his office window at the incredible sight of the space station's main docking area. Ships from dozens of different species came and went constantly. Some looked like silver fish, others like flying crystals or metal flowers. Each one represented a different way of thinking, a different approach to life among the stars. It had taken humanity almost 50 years to build this level of trust with so many different species. When humans first traveled to the stars, many aliens had been suspicious. Humans were young and aggressive, they said. Humans solved problems with violence and expansion. But humans had proven them wrong through patience and good actions. When the reptilian worlds went to war with the gas giant collective, humans had spent 3 years negotiating a peace treaty that satisfied everyone. When a plague threatened to wipe out the silicon-based Life Alliance, human doctors had worked day and night to find a cure. Now, species throughout the galaxy called on humans when they needed help with their most difficult problems. It was a responsibility that Paul took very seriously. Back on the UNS horizon, Lisa Bennett was finishing her report on their successful first contact with the Melody. The alien species had agreed to join the Galactic Confederation and had already started sharing their advanced music therapy techniques with human medical teams. Another successful mission, she told Jake as they prepared to leave the system. The Melody will make excellent partners for the Confederation. Jake nodded, but his thoughts were already on their next assignment. Command had sent them coordinates for a system where 2 species were having territorial disputes. Nothing serious, just the usual problems that came up when different peoples tried to share space. Set course for the Kepler system, Jake ordered his navigation officer, a calm man named Gary Foster. Let's see if we can help some more neighbors learn to get along. As the UNS horizon jumped into faster-than-light travel, Jake felt the same satisfaction he always felt after a successful mission. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or rulers, but as friends and helpers. They used their intelligence and creativity to solve problems instead of creating them. It was a good way to live among the stars, Jake thought. Peaceful and productive, building bridges instead of walls. He could not imagine why any species would want to live differently. He had no way of knowing that in the outer rim of the galaxy, a species called the Corvani Empire was watching humanity's growing influence with growing anger and jealousy. War Prime Thexkar and his military commanders saw human diplomacy as weakness, human kindness as an invitation for attack. But that was still months away. For now, the galaxy was at peace and humans continued their quiet work of helping others find friendship among the stars. Commander Steve Walker loved mornings on Kepler 442b. He stood on the observation deck of the colony's main building, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. 3 different species lived together in this place, and somehow they had made it work beautifully. Below him, human children played in the gardens with young Zephyrians, whose scales changed color when they laughed. Crystal and Vortani moved between them like living rainbows, their bodies catching and reflecting the morning light. The sight always made Steve feel proud of what they had accomplished here. "Beautiful morning," said Dr. Helen Wright, joining him on the deck with her own cup of coffee. She was the colony's head of cultural studies, a woman who spent her days helping different species understand each other's customs and needs. "Every morning is beautiful here," Steve replied. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years since we started this place." Helen nodded, watching a group of mixed-species teenagers working together in the science labs, visible through the transparent walls below. "Remember how nervous everyone was in the beginning? The Zephyrians thought humans were too loud. Humans thought the Vortani were too quiet, and everyone worried about the Vortani accidentally cutting someone with their crystal edges." Steve laughed. "And now look at them. The kids especially. They don't even see the differences anymore." This was true. The younger generation of all 3 species played together, learned together, and seemed to naturally understand each other in ways that still amazed their parents. They had created new games that worked for all 3 body types, developed art forms that combined human creativity with Zephyrian color changing and Vortani light bending. "Commander, came a voice from the communication system. "We're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Confederation." "It's marked urgent." Steve and Helen exchanged glances. Urgent messages usually meant problems somewhere in the galaxy, though they rarely affected peaceful colonies like theirs. "I'll take it in my office," Steve said, finishing his coffee. Probably just another trade dispute that needs mediating. But when Steve reached his office and activated the secure communication channel, the face that appeared on his screen was not the calm expression he expected. Admiral Janet Pierce, commander of the sector fleet, looked worried and tired. "Steve, I need you to increase security around the colony immediately," she said without any greeting pleasantries. "We've been getting intelligence reports about increased Corvani Empire activity in your sector." Steve frowned. The Corvani Empire was known throughout the galaxy as a military-focused species, but they had never shown interest in the peaceful outer colonies before. They usually stayed in their own territory, fighting small wars with other aggressive species. "What kind of activity?" Steve asked. "Are they expanding their territory?" "We're not sure," Admiral Pierce admitted. "Their ship movements don't follow their usual patterns. They seem to be scouting systems with human populations, especially mixed colonies like yours. Our analysts think they might be planning something, but we don't know what." Steve felt a cold worry settle in his stomach. The colony had basic defensive systems, enough to protect against space pirates or natural disasters. But they were not designed to fight off a serious military attack. The whole point of the colony was to prove that different species could live together peacefully. "How much time do we have?" Steve asked, unknown. "Maybe weeks, maybe months. Just be ready, and report anything unusual immediately." After the call ended, Steve sat alone in his office for several minutes thinking. He had never been a soldier, though he had trained with the Colonial Defense Force. His job was administration, helping families settle into new homes and making sure everyone had what they needed. But now he might need to protect all those families from an enemy that lived for war. That afternoon, Steve called a meeting with the colony's senior staff. Besides Dr. Helen Wright, there was Chief Engineer Alan Brown, Security Chief Rita Martinez, and the elected representatives from each species. Dr. Marcus Thompson for the humans, Scalesinger Vexhi for the Zephyrians, and Crystal Voice Nenthara for the Vortani. "I won't lie to you," Steve told them after explaining the situation. "If the Corvani Empire decides to attack us, we cannot stop them with force. Our best defense is that we're not a military target. We're just farmers, scientists, and families trying to live together." Scalesinger Vexhi, whose scales had turned a worried shade of dark blue, spoke first. "The Corvani do not value peaceful cooperation. In their culture, cooperation is seen as weakness. They respect only strength and conquest." Crystal Voice Nenthara's body pulsed with nervous light patterns. "My people's homeworld had contact with the Corvani centuries ago. They demanded tribute and threatened violence when we refused. We had to move our entire civilization to avoid them." Dr. Marcus Thompson, an older man who had helped plan the colony from the beginning, looked grim. "So what are our options? We can't abandon everything we've built here." "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best," Security Chief Rita Martinez said. She was a former military officer who had retired to colony life, but still remembered her training. "I'll work with the engineering team to improve our defensive systems. We'll also set up evacuation procedures just in case." Over the next few weeks, life in the colony continued normally on the surface, but underneath, everyone could feel the tension. Parents watched their children play and wondered if they would have to suddenly leave their homes. Scientists continued their research but also backed up all their data to secure locations. Steve found himself spending long hours on the observation deck, watching the stars and wondering if enemy ships were moving through the darkness toward them. He had sent messages to Admiral Pierce requesting additional defensive support, but the closest military vessels were weeks away. "You're losing sleep," Dr. Helen Wright told him one evening as she found him on the deck again. "Hard to sleep when you're responsible for 8,000 lives," Steve replied. 3 different species who trusted humans enough to build a new life here. "The Corvani might not even come," Helen said, though her voice carried doubt. "Maybe their ship movements mean something else entirely." Steve wanted to believe that, but his instincts told him otherwise. Something was coming, and when it arrived, the peaceful life they had built on Kepler 442b would change forever. His instincts proved correct 3 days later, when the long-range sensors picked up multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Security Chief Rita Martinez called Steve to the command center immediately. 15 ships, she reported, her face pale as she read the sensor data. All of them Corvani design, all of them heavily armed. They're not responding to our communication attempts. Steve stared at the tactical display showing red dots moving steadily toward their planet. Each red dot represented a ship designed for war, carrying weapons that could destroy their entire colony in minutes. Send the evacuation signal, Steve ordered. All non-essential personnel to the shelters. Essential staff to emergency stations. Throughout the colony, alarms began to sound. Families who had been eating dinner together suddenly had to say goodbye as parents went to their emergency duties, and children were taken to protected areas. The Zephyrian, Vortani, and human children held hands as they were led to safety, not understanding why the adults looked so frightened. "Commander," came a voice over the communication system. "The Corvani fleet is sending a message." "Put it through," Steve said, though he dreaded what he was about to hear. The screen filled with the image of a Corvani commander, his reptilian face scarred from many battles. When he spoke, his voice carried the cold certainty of someone who had never lost a fight. "I am War Prime Thexkar of the Corvani Empire," the alien said. "You have 15 minutes to surrender your colony to our control. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlement and the execution of all inhabitants." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 15 minutes to decide the fate of 8,000 innocent beings. 15 minutes to choose between surrender and a hopeless fight. Steve looked around at his staff, seeing the same thought in all their eyes. They could not win a battle against 15 warships, but they also could not simply hand over their families to an empire known for its cruelty. "Send a message to Admiral Pierce," Steve ordered. "Tell her what's happening here. Make sure the galaxy knows that the Corvani Empire has attacked a peaceful colony." Then he activated the colony-wide communication system, speaking to every person who had trusted him to keep them safe. "This is Commander Walker. We are facing a choice that no peaceful people should ever have to make. But whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you to know that what we built here was beautiful and good. We proved that different species can live together as friends and family." He paused, looking out the window at the Corvani ships growing larger in the sky. "We will not surrender our families to an empire that sees kindness as weakness. We will protect each other for as long as we can." The first explosions lit up the night sky over Kepler 442b like deadly fireworks. Commander Steve Walker watched from the command center as Corvani ships rained destruction on the colony's outer settlements. The defensive shields held for the first few minutes, but everyone knew they would not last long against military-grade weapons. "Evacuation shuttles are launching," Security Chief Rita Martinez reported, her voice tight with controlled panic. "We're getting as many people out as possible, but the Corvani ships are moving to intercept them." Steve felt his heart break as he watched the tactical display. Tiny blue dots representing escape shuttles tried to flee the planet, but red enemy ships moved to block their path. This was not a military conquest. This was slaughter. "Commander, incoming transmission from one of our shuttles," the communications officer called out. "Put it through," Steve ordered, hoping for good news but expecting the worst. The voice that came through the speakers belonged to Lieutenant Amy Foster, a young pilot who had volunteered to fly civilians to safety. Her voice shook with fear and anger as she spoke. "This is Shuttle 7. They're not letting anyone escape. They're firing on ships full of families, full of children. The Corvani aren't taking prisoners. They're killing everyone they can catch." Steve closed his eyes, feeling the weight of failure crushing down on him. These people had trusted him to keep them safe, and now he was watching them die because he had not been strong enough to protect them. "Amy, can you break through their blockade?" he asked, knowing the answer but hoping anyway. "Negative, sir. They have us surrounded. I'm going to try to ram their command ship. See if I can at least take some of them with us. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Corvani showed no mercy." The communication cut off, and moments later Steve watched a bright flash appear on the tactical screen as Shuttle 7 collided with a Corvani warship. Both vessels disappeared from the display. Throughout the colony, the sounds of battle grew closer. Explosions shook the buildings as defensive positions fell one by one. In the shelters, families held each other tight while the world ended around them. Dr. Helen Wright found Steve in the command center as the ceiling began to crack from nearby explosions. "The main shelter has been breached," she reported. "Corvani ground forces are inside the colony. Steve nodded grimly. He had known this moment would come. Send the final transmission to Admiral Pierce. Make sure the galaxy knows what the Corvani Empire did here. As Helen worked at the communications console, Steve activated his personal recorder and began to speak. This is Commander Steve Walker of the Kepler 442b colony. If anyone receives this message, know that the Corvani Empire attacked a peaceful settlement without warning or cause. They murdered families, destroyed our homes, and showed no mercy to children or civilians of any species. He paused as another explosion shook the building, then continued. We tried to live in peace. We proved that different species could work together, learn together, and build something beautiful together. The Corvani Empire destroyed it all because they saw our friendship as weakness. Through the command center windows, Steve could see Corvani soldiers moving through the colony streets, their weapons destroying everything in their path. The gardens where children had played were burning. The laboratories where brilliant minds had worked together were being blown apart. Tell our families on Earth that we died trying to protect something good, Steve said into the recorder. Tell them that peace is not weakness and kindness is not surrender. Tell them. The door to the command center exploded inward, and Corvani soldiers poured into the room. Steve had just enough time to see Dr. Helen Wright fall before enemy weapons ended his own life. But his final message had already been transmitted across space, racing toward Earth at the speed of light. 18 hours later, that message arrived at Solar Defense Command on Luna. Admiral Janet Pierce sat in a secure briefing room, surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers in the solar system. The recording of Steve Walker's final transmission played on repeat while officers reviewed the tactical data from Kepler 442b. Complete destruction, reported General Ryan Clark, head of the Solar Defense Force. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands were clenched into fists. 8,000 civilians dead. No survivors detected by our long-range sensors. President Karen Adams appeared on the main screen, calling in from Earth. Her usually calm expression was replaced by something harder and more dangerous. General Clark, what is the current status of our military capabilities? Ma'am, our exploration fleets are well equipped for defense but not for offensive operations. However, he paused, exchanging glances with the other officers. We do have other assets that have been kept in reserve. What kind of assets? The President asked. Admiral Pierce spoke up. Madam President, for the past 30 years, while we've been building a reputation as peacekeepers and diplomats, a small group of military planners have been preparing for exactly this scenario. Hidden shipyards, advanced weapons systems, strategic reserves that the galaxy knows nothing about. President Adams leaned forward in her chair. Are you telling me we've been secretly building a war fleet? Yes, ma'am, General Clark replied. We hoped we would never need it. Our public policy has always been peace through diplomacy. But some of us remembered that peace only works when everyone agrees to be peaceful. The President was quiet for a long moment, and everyone in the room could see her struggling with the decision. Humanity had spent decades building trust with alien species by being the ones who always chose peace over war. Now they were being asked to throw that reputation away for revenge. How many people died on Kepler 442b? She asked finally. 8,000 confirmed, Admiral Pierce answered, including 1,500 children. And the Corvani Empire has publicly claimed responsibility for this attack? Yes, ma'am. War Prime Thexkar broadcast a message to the entire Galactic Confederation, boasting about their victory and threatening any species that continues to support humanity. President Adams nodded slowly. Then we are no longer choosing between peace and war. The Corvani Empire made that choice for us when they murdered our families. She turned to address General Clark directly. How long would it take to mobilize these secret assets? 72 hours to bring all systems online. Another 24 hours to reach Corvani space. Do it. But I want this to be surgical and precise. We destroy their military capability completely, but we do not become the monsters they are. No civilian targets, no unnecessary destruction. We show the galaxy that humans can wage war with the same precision we've always used for peace. As the President's transmission ended, Admiral Pierce turned to the assembled officers. You heard the order. Operation Retribution is now active. Contact Dr. Susan White immediately. We'll need her Weapons Research Division operational within the hour. Dr. Susan White had been retired for 8 years, living quietly on a farm in Montana, where she tried to forget about the terrible weapons she had designed during humanity's early expansion into space. When the call came, she was feeding chickens and enjoying the peaceful morning sunshine. "Dr. White, this is General Clark. We need you to return to active duty immediately." She had known this day might come eventually. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of species that saw kindness as an invitation for attack. She had spent decades developing weapons systems that could end wars quickly and decisively, then had locked them away and prayed they would never be needed. "How bad is it?" she asked, already walking toward her house to pack. "They killed children, Susan, families trying to escape in shuttles. The Corvani Empire wants to use fear to control the galaxy." Dr. White closed her eyes and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. She had always known that humanity's greatest strength was their capacity for both incredible kindness and terrible fury. The galaxy was about to learn why it was dangerous to push humans past their breaking point. "I'll be there in 6 hours," she said. "And General, make sure the fabrication facilities are ready. We're going to show the Corvani Empire why humans chose peace in the first place." In hidden bases throughout the solar system, weapons that had been dormant for decades began to power up. Ships designed for war rather than exploration emerged from asteroid hiding places. The same species that had spent generations reaching out to make friends among the stars now turned their creativity toward a single purpose: ensuring that the massacre at Kepler 442b would never happen again. The peaceful explorers were about to become something much more dangerous, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. Dr. Susan White stood in the center of the most advanced weapons laboratory humanity had ever built, watching as systems that had been sleeping for years came back to life. Red lights blinked on across dozens of control panels, and the hum of charging power cells filled the air like an angry song. "Status report," she called out to the technicians rushing around the facility. "Quantum torpedo production is at full capacity," reported Chief Engineer Alan Martinez. "We'll have 500 units ready within 12 hours. Nanoplague deployment systems are online," added Dr. Kevin Foster from the Biological Weapons Station. "We can target Corvani physiology specifically. Their military equipment will dissolve, but other species will be completely unaffected." Susan nodded grimly. These weapons had been designed during humanity's darker days, when they thought they might need to fight for survival against hostile aliens. She had hoped to never see them used, but the images from Kepler 442b had changed everything. "What about the hunter-killer drones?" she asked. "Ready for deployment," answered Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Myers. "Each one can track and disable an entire enemy squadron without human guidance. They never miss, and they never stop until their targets are neutralized." Across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out in a dozen hidden facilities. Admiral Tony Martinez stood on the bridge of the UNS Vengeance, watching his crew prepare for their first real combat mission. The ship looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels the galaxy knew about. It was angular and black, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays designed for one purpose: total warfare. "Navigation, set course for the Corvani home system," Admiral Martinez ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir," said his communications officer, a young woman named Betty Clark, "we're receiving protests from several Galactic Confederation members. They're asking us to pursue diplomatic solutions instead of military action." Admiral Martinez's expression hardened. "Tell them that diplomacy ended when the Corvani Empire decided to murder children. We tried their way for 50 years. Now we do this our way." The Vengeance was not alone. Around it flew ships with names like Retribution, Fury, and Justice. Each one carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that could survive direct hits from battleship cannons. Humanity had been building this fleet in secret for decades, hoping never to use it, but preparing for the day when peace was no longer an option. Captain Nicole Grant sat in the command center of the stealth ship UNS Shadow, studying intelligence reports about Corvani military installations. Her job was different from the battle fleet. She would strike first, gathering information and weakening enemy defenses before the main attack began. "We'll hit their sensor networks first," she told her team of special operations soldiers. "Blind them completely. Then we take out their command centers and communication hubs. By the time their military realizes what's happening, it will be too late to coordinate a defense." Her team was made up of veterans who had trained for years in hidden facilities, learning to fight wars that humanity hoped would never come. They were experts in alien psychology, military tactics, and advanced technology. They could move through enemy territory like ghosts and strike with the precision of surgeons. "Remember," Nicole said as they approached Corvani space, "we are not conquerors. We are not seeking to rule or destroy their civilization. We are simply removing their ability to hurt innocent people ever again." The first phase of the attack began at exactly 300 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Captain Grant's stealth teams appeared simultaneously at 17 different Corvani military installations, moving through their defenses like they were not even there. On the Corvani homeworld, Warprime Thexkar was celebrating his victory at Kepler 442b with his senior commanders when every screen in his command center suddenly went dark. "What is happening?" he roared, his reptilian features twisted with anger. "Sir, we're receiving reports of system failures across all military networks," reported his chief technician, panic clear in his voice. "Sensors, communications, defensive grids. Everything is going offline simultaneously." Thexkar felt the first cold touch of fear. The Corvani Empire had the most advanced military technology in their region of space. Their systems were designed to resist any known form of attack. This should have been impossible. "Send fighter squadrons to investigate," he ordered. "Find out what is causing these failures." But when the fighters launched, they found their weapon systems failing as well. Some kind of invisible force was moving through Corvani space, systematically destroying every piece of military equipment it encountered. Weapons dissolved in soldiers' hands. Starship engines shut down without warning. Defensive shields collapsed like soap bubbles. Dr. White's nanoplague weapons were working exactly as designed. They recognized Corvani military technology at the molecular level and began breaking it down into harmless components. A Corvani soldier's rifle would simply fall apart in his hands, while the civilian communicator in his pocket remained completely functional. "This is impossible," Thexkar muttered, watching reports pour in from across his empire. No species has technology this advanced. His chief intelligence officer, a scarred veteran named Sekvar, looked up from his data screens with terror in his eyes. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of human space. Multiple large vessels moving at speeds that should not be possible." On the main tactical display, red dots began appearing at the edge of Corvani space. But these were not the small exploration ships that the Empire knew about. These were warships, and they were heading directly for the homeworld. Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the Corvani capital planet. Around him, his fleet of warships took perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto military targets below. "Open a channel to the Corvani command center," he ordered. When the channel opened, Warprime Thexkar's shocked face appeared on the screen. The Corvani leader had expected to face human diplomats with offers of negotiation. Instead, he found himself looking at a human admiral whose eyes held no mercy whatsoever. "I am Admiral Tony Martinez of the Human Retribution Fleet," the human said in a voice like cold steel. "You attacked a peaceful colony and murdered innocent families. You showed no mercy to children who had done nothing wrong. You chose to make war against species that wanted only friendship." Thexkar tried to find his voice, tried to project the confidence that had carried him through a dozen military campaigns. "Human, you are outnumbered. This is our space, our territory. You cannot hope to defeat the Corvani Empire." Admiral Martinez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Warprime Thexkar, you made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that because humans choose peace, we are incapable of war. You assumed that because we show mercy, we are weak. You were wrong." On the tactical display behind Martinez, Corvani military positions began disappearing one by one, not destroyed by massive explosions, but simply gone. Their weapons stopped working, their shields failed, their ships lost power and drifted helplessly in space. "This is not possible," Thexkar whispered, watching his entire military force become helpless in the span of minutes. "We had 50 years to prepare for this day," Martinez replied. 50 years to develop weapons and tactics that no species has ever seen before. 50 years to build a military force designed specifically to end wars quickly and completely. The demonstration continued for exactly 1 hour. In that time, every Corvani military installation was neutralized, every warship disabled, every weapons factory shut down, not through massive destruction, but through precision strikes that left civilian areas completely untouched. When it was over, the Corvani Empire still existed as a civilization, but their capacity for making war had been completely removed. Their soldiers found themselves holding weapons that no longer functioned. Their ships could carry cargo but could not fire a single shot. "This is your choice," Admiral Martinez told the stunned War Prime. "You can surrender now and begin the process of rebuilding your society as a peaceful member of the galactic community. Or you can continue to resist. And we will demonstrate that what we have shown you so far was only the beginning of human military capability." Thexkar looked around his command center at officers who had never known defeat, now staring at screens that showed their empire's military might reduce to nothing in the span of a single hour. He began, then stopped. For the first time in his life, the War Prime of the Corvani Empire had nothing to say. "You have 24 hours to give us your answer," Martinez said. "Choose wisely. The galaxy is watching." As the transmission ended, Thexkar slumped in his command chair, finally understanding the terrible mistake he had made. He had awakened something that was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. A species that was capable of incredible destruction, but chose instead to show mercy. The humans had not come to conquer or destroy. They had come to ensure that the massacre at Kepler 442b would never happen again, and they had succeeded with such overwhelming force that resistance was not just hopeless, it was pointless. For the first time in Corvani history, their empire would have to learn how to exist without the threat of violence. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation had been called for the first time in over 30 years. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Assembly Hall on Harmony Point, their voices creating a storm of worried conversation that echoed off the crystal walls. Ambassador Paul Richards walked slowly to the speaking platform, feeling the weight of every eye in the room watching him. He had represented humanity in this hall for 15 years, always as a voice for peace and cooperation. "Today would be different, fellow representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. 3 days ago, the Corvani Empire committed an act of unprecedented evil. They attacked a peaceful colony, murdered 8,000 innocent civilians, and boasted about their crime to the entire galaxy. The hall fell silent. Everyone had heard the reports, seen the recordings that War Prime Thexkar had broadcast as a demonstration of Corvani power. The images of burning homes and destroyed shuttles had shocked species that had grown comfortable with decades of peace. "Many of you have contacted Earth, asking us to respond with diplomacy rather than force," Paul continued. "You have reminded us of our reputation as peacemakers and mediators. You have asked us to turn the other cheek, to find a peaceful solution to this tragedy." An elderly representative from the Crystalline Union stood up. "Ambassador Richards, surely there must be a way to resolve this conflict without warfare. Violence only creates more violence." Paul looked at the crystal being with sad eyes. "Honored crystal singer Velnara, tell me, what diplomatic solution do you propose for the 1,500 children who died on Kepler 442b? What negotiation will bring back the families who were murdered while trying to escape in shuttles?" The hall remained silent. Everyone knew there was no answer to those questions. "For 50 years, Paul said, his voice growing stronger, humanity has chosen peace over war, cooperation over conquest. We have mediated your disputes, helped solve your problems, and proven that different species can work together. You began to believe that this was our nature, that we were naturally peaceful, naturally gentle, naturally weak." He paused, scanning the assembled representatives. "You were wrong. We are not peaceful because we are weak. We are peaceful because we understand the true cost of war better than any species in this room. We choose cooperation because we know exactly how terrible the alternatives can be." On the main display screen, images began to appear from the Corvani home system. Not scenes of destruction, but something far more shocking. Corvani military bases sitting intact but completely powerless. Warships floating helplessly in space with their weapons dissolved. Soldiers holding rifles that had simply fallen apart in their hands. "In 72 hours, Paul said quietly, humanity dismantled the entire military capability of the Corvani Empire. We did not destroy their cities or harm their civilians. We simply removed their ability to make war ever again." A reptilian representative from the Saurian collective hissed in amazement. "This level of technological superiority? How long have humans possessed such weapons?" "Since before we joined the Confederation," Paul replied honestly. We developed them during our early expansion into space when we thought we might need to fight for survival. Then we locked them away and chose diplomacy instead. We hoped we would never need to use them. The crystalline representative spoke again, her voice trembling. If humans possessed such power all along, why did you not use it to dominate the galaxy? Paul smiled sadly. Because domination was never our goal. We wanted friends, not subjects. We wanted to build something beautiful together, not rule over others through fear. He activated another display, showing images of the Kepler 442b colony before the attack. Human, Zephyrian, and Vortny children playing together in gardens filled with alien flowers. Scientists from different species working side by side in laboratories. Families of mixed heritage sharing meals and celebrations. This is what we wanted, Paul said, his voice breaking slightly. This is what the Corvani Empire destroyed. They saw our friendship as weakness, our kindness as an invitation for attack. An insectoid representative from the Hive Collective clicked its mandibles nervously. What happens now, Ambassador Richards? Will humanity use this military power to enforce its will on the galaxy? Paul shook his head. We will do exactly what we have always done. We will help those who ask for help, protect those who need protection, and work toward a galaxy where different species can live together in peace. But we will never again allow anyone to mistake our choice for peace as an inability to defend ourselves. He turned to address the Corvani representative, a minor official who had been sent to replace War Prime Thexkar after his complete surrender. The Corvani Empire has been given a choice. They can rebuild their civilization as a peaceful member of the galactic community, or they can continue to pursue military aggression and face the consequences. The Corvani official, a young female named Sectara, stood on shaking legs. Ambassador Richards, my people. We did not understand. We thought humans were weak because you chose not to fight. We see now that we were wrong. War Prime Thexkar has agreed to complete disarmament. We want to learn how to live peacefully. Paul's expression softened. Peace is learned through practice, not conquest. Humanity will help your people find a new path, just as we have helped others. But the choice to walk that path must be yours. Over the following weeks, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity kept its word. The Retribution fleet did not occupy Corvani space or demand tribute. Instead, human diplomats and teachers arrived to help the former empire rebuild itself as a peaceful society. Dr. Amanda Carter established new programs to help Corvani citizens understand the cultures they had once planned to conquer. Former Corvani soldiers were retrained as engineers and farmers. Children who had been raised to see violence as strength learned new games that emphasized cooperation and creativity. Captain Jake Morrison returned to his exploration duties, but now his ship carried both scientific equipment and defensive systems that no hostile force could overcome. The galaxy's peaceful species breathed easier knowing that humanity's explorers could protect themselves and others from any threat. On the rebuilt Kepler 442b, now called Memorial Colony, a great wall displayed the names of everyone who had died in the Corvani attack. Human, Zephyrian, and Vortani families worked together to create something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. The memorial's inscription was written in the languages of all three species. In memory of those who died because evil mistook goodness for weakness, may their sacrifice ensure it never happens again. War Prime Thexkar lived out his remaining years in exile, traveling from system to system and speaking to any military leader who would listen. His message was always the same. Do not make the mistake I made. Do not awaken the sleeping dragon that chooses to dream of peace. Some aggressive species listened to his warnings. Others thought themselves stronger than the Corvani Empire had been. Those who tested humanity's resolve learned the same lesson that Thexkar had learned, that the most dangerous enemy was not the one who always fought, but the one who could end any fight whenever they chose to begin. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their advanced weapons or military tactics. It was their ability to choose mercy over vengeance, cooperation over domination, and peace over war. But they had also learned that this choice came from a position of strength, not weakness. Never again would any species look at human diplomats and see easy targets. Never again would anyone mistake humanity's extended hand of friendship for a sign of vulnerability. The massacre at Kepler 442b had been the last time anyone would test whether humans were truly as peaceful as they appeared. From that day forward, when aggressive species considered attacking peaceful settlements, they remembered what had happened to the Corvani Empire. They remembered that somewhere in human space, Weapons of unimaginable power waited in the darkness, ready to defend any innocent life that was threatened. And in that remembrance, peace was preserved not through fear, but through the knowledge that those with the power to end all wars had chosen instead to prevent them from starting. The galaxy was safer because humanity had proven that true strength lay not in the willingness to fight, but in the wisdom to know when fighting was the only option left. 5 years had passed since the Corvani Empire learned the true meaning of human fury. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UNS Discovery, watching a sight that would have been impossible during the old days, a Corvani transport ship docking peacefully at human space. Station Alpha 7, quite a change from the war fleets they used to send, commented her first officer, Lieutenant Commander David Kim. He was young enough to have grown up after the Corvani War, as historians had begun calling it, though most humans preferred to call it the Kepler Memorial Action. Elena nodded, remembering her own service during those dark 72 hours. She had been a junior officer on the UNS Fury then, watching in amazement as humanity's hidden weapons turned the galaxy's most aggressive empire into helpless observers of their own defeat. Captain, called communications, Officer Sarah Lopez from her station. The Corvani delegation is requesting permission to come aboard. They have something they want to show us. Grant permission, Elena replied. Escort them to conference room 3. 20 minutes later, Elena found herself sitting across a table from 3 Corvani civilians. The lead delegate was an elderly female named Kexitira, who had been a simple farmer during the days of the Empire. Now she served as one of the elected leaders of the Corvani Republic, the peaceful government that had replaced the military dictatorship. Captain Rodriguez, Kexitira began, her voice carrying the careful pronunciation that Corvani had learned when speaking human languages. We bring greetings from the children of New Harmony Settlement. She activated a small device that projected a holographic image above the table. Elena smiled as she saw dozens of young Corvani playing in a garden alongside human and Zephyrian children. They were building something together, a small model of a space station where all 3 species could work side by side. This is the school we built with human assistance, explained another delegate, a young male named Vexhan who had been a child during the war. The children learn about cooperation, about building instead of destroying. They learn that strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. Elena studied the hologram, noting how the Corvani children seemed completely comfortable with their alien playmates. What do they think about their empire's past? Kextira's expression grew serious. They know the truth about what their leaders did. We teach them about Kepler 442b, about the innocent people who died because their government chose war over peace. It is a hard lesson, but an important one. The third delegate, an older male named Tekvar, leaned forward. Captain, we have a request. Our young people want to visit the memorial colony, to see the place where their empire's evil was finally stopped. They want to pay their respects to the families who died there. This was unusual. In the 5 years since the Corvani surrender, their new government had been careful to avoid anything that might remind the galaxy of their violent past. The request to visit the site of their empire's greatest crime showed how much their society had changed. I'll need to clear this with colonial administration, Elena said, but I think it's a wonderful idea. The memorial was built to help people remember and learn, not to create shame. After the Corvani delegation left, Elena sent a message to Memorial Colony, where Commander Lisa Chen now oversaw the rebuilt settlement. The response came back within hours. Not only would the colony welcome young Corvani visitors, but the survivors of the original attack wanted to meet them personally. 3 weeks later, Elena found herself standing in the memorial garden on Kepler 442b, watching an extraordinary scene unfold. 40 young Corvani, none older than 20, stood quietly before the great wall that bore the names of the attack's victims. With them were 20 elderly humans, Zephyrians, and Vortani, the few survivors who had escaped the massacre 5 years earlier. Dr. Maria Santos, one of the human survivors, approached a young Corvani female who was crying as she read the names on the wall. "What's your name, child?" she asked gently. "I am called Lixanda," the young Corvani replied, wiping tears from her scaled cheeks. "My older brother was a soldier in the attack fleet. He died when your ships destroyed the command vessel." Dr. Santos nodded slowly. "I lost my daughter and grandchildren in the attack. They were in Shuttle 7, the one that tried to ram the Corvani flagship. Lixanda looked stricken. "I am so sorry. I know my words cannot bring them back, but I am sorry." To Elena's amazement, Dr. Santos reached out and took the young Corvani's hand. "Child, you were not responsible for what happened here. You were barely old enough to understand war and peace when your empire made its choice. What matters now is what you do with the lessons you've learned." Similar conversations were happening all around the memorial garden, old survivors sharing their pain with young Corvani, who carried the guilt of their species' past. It was not easy, and there were tears from both sides. But Elena could see something healing in the air. Commander Lisa Chen joined Elena near the central monument, where a eternal flame burned in memory of all who had died. "5 years ago, I thought this place would always be about grief and anger," Lisa said quietly. "I never imagined it could become a place of reconciliation." "The Corvani have changed," Elena replied. "Really changed, not just pretending to be different. Their children genuinely want to learn how to live peacefully. It helps that they remember what happened to their empire when they chose war," Lisa added. "Nothing teaches the value of peace like seeing what happens when you lose it." That evening, the mixed group gathered in the colony's main hall for a shared meal. The young Corvani had prepared traditional foods from their homeworld, while the survivors had made dishes that represented all 3 species that had lived in the original colony. Kexatira, who had come with the young delegation, stood to address the group. 5 years ago, the Corvani Empire believed that strength came from conquest and fear. We were wrong. We learned that true strength comes from the choice to be peaceful, and that the most dangerous enemies are those who could destroy you, but choose instead to help you become better. She gestured to the humans in the room. "Humanity could have turned our homeworld to ash. They could have enslaved our people or taken revenge for the innocent lives we stole. Instead, they chose to help us learn a new way of living. This is a strength we are still trying to understand." Dr. Santos stood up from her seat. "We didn't help you to make ourselves feel superior," she said. "We helped you because we believe that anyone can change. Anyone can choose to be better than they were. The children who died here would want their sacrifice to mean something, to help create a galaxy where no more children have to die in wars." Young Lixanda raised her hand. "Dr. Santos, what can we do to honor their memory? How can we make sure their deaths were not meaningless?" Dr. Santos smiled sadly. "Go home and teach others what you've learned here. Show them that former enemies can become friends when they choose to understand each other. Build things instead of destroying them. Choose cooperation over conquest." As the evening continued, Elena watched humans who had lost everything share stories and laughter with young Corvani who were trying to build a better future for their species. It was exactly the kind of scene that the original colonists had dreamed of. Different species learning from each other and growing stronger together. Later, as the 2 groups prepared to part ways, Vexhan approached Elena with a small gift. It was a crystal sculpture showing 3 species, human, Corvani, and Zephyrian, standing together with their hands linked in friendship. "We made this in our school," he explained. "It's for the memorial garden. We want people to remember that even the worst enemies can become friends if they're willing to change." Elena accepted the gift with tears in her eyes. "We'll place it right in the center of the garden, where everyone who visits can see it." As the Corvani transport ship departed from Memorial Colony, Elena reflected on how much the galaxy had changed in just 5 years. The Corvani Empire was gone, replaced by a peaceful republic that was slowly earning the trust of other species. Their former soldiers now worked as engineers and teachers. Their former weapons factories produced tools for farming and construction. But the most important change was not in the Corvani themselves. It was in how every other species in the galaxy now viewed humanity. The peaceful diplomats and explorers had revealed their true nature, not as weak beings who couldn't fight, but as powerful beings who chose not to fight unless absolutely necessary. The galaxy had learned that human mercy was not a sign of weakness, but a gift freely given by those strong enough to choose differently, and in learning that lesson, the galaxy had become a safer place for everyone who chose peace over war. The memorial flame continued to burn on Kepler 442b, but now it illuminated more than just grief and loss. It also lit the way toward a future where former enemies could become friends, where the innocent would be protected by those with the power to protect them, and where peace was maintained not through fear, but through the quiet strength of those who knew the true cost of war. 10 years after the Corvani defeat, The galaxy had settled into a new rhythm of peace. But in the distant Omega sector, a species called the Hegemony Collective had been watching humanity's actions with growing concern. Unlike the Corvani, who had acted from simple aggression, the Hegemony saw humanity's hidden strength as a threat to their own plans for galactic expansion. Supreme Coordinator Zexhul stood before the collective's War Council, his silver exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of their command center. Around him, the greatest military minds of the Hegemony studied tactical displays showing human fleet movements and colony locations. For a decade, we have observed the humans carefully, Zexhul began, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. They destroyed the Corvani military in 72 hours, then returned to their peaceful ways. This suggests their hidden weapons are limited in number, perhaps even experimental prototypes. War analyst Nexvara, her cybernetic implants flickering with data streams, spoke up. Supreme Coordinator, the Corvani were primitive compared to our technology. Their defeat proves nothing about humanity's ability to face our advanced cybernetic warfare systems. Zexhul nodded approvingly. The Hegemony Collective was different from every other species in the galaxy. They had replaced most of their organic parts with mechanical upgrades, becoming more machine than biological. Their ships were controlled by networked artificial intelligence, their weapons guided by computer precision that never missed. The humans showed mercy to the Corvani, added strategic controller Vexthon. This weakness can be exploited. We will not attack defenseless colonies. Instead, we will strike their military bases directly, forcing them to reveal their true capabilities in open combat. Unlike the Corvani Empire, the Hegemony Collective did not broadcast their intentions across the galaxy. They moved in secret, gathering intelligence and preparing for a war they believed they could win through superior technology and tactical planning. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral and commanding the exploration fleet, was investigating strange sensor readings near the galactic rim when the first Hegemony attack began. His ship, the UNS Horizon 2, detected massive energy signatures moving toward the human military base at Centauri Station. Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Amy Chen, we're reading multiple large vessels approaching Centauri at high speed. Configuration unknown, but their energy signatures are off the charts. Jake frowned as he studied the sensor data. These ships were different from anything in the galactic database. Larger than Corvani warships, more advanced than anything the peaceful species used for exploration. Send a priority alert to Solar Defense Command, Jake ordered, and get me a direct line to Admiral Martinez. But when Jake tried to contact Centauri Station, he found only static. The Hegemony's first strike had been against the communication networks, using advanced electromagnetic warfare to blind and deafen human forces before the main attack began. At Centauri Station, Admiral Tony Martinez found himself facing an enemy unlike anything humanity had encountered before. The Hegemony ships moved with mechanical precision, their attacks coordinated by artificial intelligence that could process tactical information faster than any organic brain. Their shields are adapting to our weapons, reported his weapons officer, Commander Ryan Bell. Every shot we fire, they analyze and adjust their defenses accordingly. Admiral Martinez watched grimly as the first wave of human defenses crumbled under the Hegemony assault. These enemies had studied the Corvani defeat carefully and had come prepared for humanity's advanced technology. Sir, called his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the attacking fleet. Put it through, Martinez ordered. The face that appeared on the main screen was barely recognizable as organic. Supreme Coordinator Zexhul's features had been so heavily modified with mechanical parts that he looked more like a machine than a living being. I am Supreme. Coordinator Zexhul of the Hegemony Collective, the figure said in a voice that sounded like it came from a computer. We have studied your victory over the Corvani primitives. Your weapons are indeed advanced, but your tactics remain predictably organic. You rely on emotion, instinct, and individual decision-making, weaknesses that our networked intelligence can exploit. Martinez tried to respond, but Zexhul continued. We do not seek to conquer your colonies or harm your civilians. We simply wish to test our military capabilities against yours. Consider this a scientific experiment. The transmission ended and the Hegemony assault intensified. Their ships moved like parts of a single organism, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. When human forces tried to concentrate their fire on one target, the entire enemy fleet would shift formation to protect it. On Earth, President Karen Adams received the emergency reports with growing alarm. The hegemony was not making the same mistakes as the Corvani Empire. They had studied humanity's response to the previous war and had developed countermeasures for every weapon system that had been revealed. "How long before our hidden reserves can reach Centauri?" she asked General Ryan Clark. 18 hours, the general replied grimly. "But ma'am, I'm not sure our conventional weapons will be effective against this enemy. Their adaptive technology is beyond anything we prepared for." President Adams turned to Dr. Susan White, who had been monitoring the battle from Earth's military command center. "Doctor, do we have anything that can stop them?" Dr. White was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical data streaming in from Centauri Station. "There is one option," she said finally, "but it's something we swore we would never use except in the most desperate circumstances." "What kind of option?" the president asked, though something in the doctor's tone made her afraid of the answer. "Project Prometheus," Dr. White replied. "A weapon system so advanced that it could reshape the fundamental structure of matter itself. We developed it 20 years ago, then locked it away because we feared what it could do." General Clark looked stunned. "Susan, you never told me about any Prometheus project." "Because it was classified beyond top secret," Dr. White explained. "Only 3 people in the entire solar system know it exists. Myself, the president, and the chief science advisor. It's not just a weapon. It's a technology that could unmake entire solar systems if it fell into the wrong hands." President Adams stared at the tactical display showing human forces being systematically defeated by the hegemony's adaptive technology. Centauri Station was holding for now, but everyone could see that it was only a matter of time before the defenses collapsed completely. "What are the risks of using this Prometheus system?" she asked. "Unknown," Dr. White admitted. "We've never tested it in real combat. The simulations suggest it would work, but the power levels involved are so extreme that we can't be certain of all the consequences." The president closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decision crushing down on her. 18 hours ago, she had been dealing with routine administrative matters. Now she was being asked to authorize a weapon that might be more dangerous than the enemy they were fighting. "Ma'am?" came a voice from the communication station. "Admiral Martinez is reporting that Centauri Station's shields are down to 30%. He estimates 6 hours before total defensive failure." President Adams opened her eyes and looked around the command center at the faces of humanity's military leaders. All of them were waiting for her decision, knowing that the wrong choice could doom not just Centauri Station, but potentially the entire human species. "The hegemony chose to test their weapons against us," she said finally. "They wanted to see what humanity is truly capable of when we stop holding back." "Very well. Dr. White, authorize Project Prometheus. Show them what happens when they force us to reveal our deepest secrets." Dr. White nodded grimly. "I'll need 4 hours to bring the system online. And ma'am, once we use this technology, there will be no putting it back in the box. The galaxy will know that humanity possesses weapons that can reshape reality itself. Then we'd better make sure we only use it on those who truly deserve it," the president replied as Dr. White hurried away to activate humanity's most dangerous secret. President Adams stared out at the stars and wondered if she had just saved her species or doomed the entire galaxy. In 6 hours, the Hegemony Collective would learn that their scientific experiment had awakened something far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. And the galaxy would discover that humanity's mercy toward the Corvani had not been a sign of their limits, but rather a glimpse of their restraint. The sleeping giant was about to reveal that it had been dreaming very lightly indeed. Dr. Susan White stood in the deepest level of Luna Base, in a facility so secret that it did not appear on any official records. The Prometheus chamber was a sphere of crystalline metal suspended in the center of a vast empty space, surrounded by energy fields that made the air itself shimmer with barely contained power. "System status?" she called out to the 3 technicians who were the only other people authorized to be in this room. "Quantum resonance at optimal levels," reported Dr. Kevin Chen, his hands moving carefully over controls that could unmake matter at the molecular level. "Probability matrices are aligning properly." "Energy containment is stable," added Chief Engineer Lisa Park. But doctor, the power requirements are enormous. We're drawing energy from 6 different fusion reactors just to keep the system in standby mode. Dr. White nodded grimly. Project Prometheus was not just a weapon, it was a technology that touched the fundamental forces that held reality together. In the wrong hands, it could unravel the fabric of space itself. Final authorization codes received from the President, announced Dr. Alan Foster from his station. We are cleared to deploy against the Hegemony fleet. At Centauri Station, Admiral Tony Martinez watched his defensive fleet slowly being torn apart by the Hegemony's adaptive technology. Every weapon humanity fired, the enemy's computers analyzed and developed countermeasures within minutes. It was like fighting an opponent who became stronger with every punch you threw. "Sir," reported Commander Ryan Bell, "we've lost the cruisers Defiant and Courage. The Hegemony ships are learning to predict our tactics faster than we can change them." Admiral Martinez felt frustration building in his chest. He had commanded fleets through dozens of peacekeeping missions, but nothing had prepared him for an enemy that literally became smarter with every moment of combat. "Admiral," came a new voice from the communication station. "Priority transmission from Luna Base, it's Dr. White." When Dr. White's face appeared on the screen, Martinez was struck by how grim she looked. "Admiral, in 30 minutes you need to withdraw all your ships to a distance of at least 50,000 kilometers from the Hegemony fleet." "Doctor, if we withdraw that far, we won't be able to provide any support to Centauri Station," Martinez protested. "Admiral, trust me when I say that Centauri Station will not need your support much longer." Dr. White replied, "We are about to deploy a technology that will end this battle completely, but your ships need to be clear of the area when it happens." Martinez stared at her for a moment, then nodded. "Understood. All ships, begin withdrawal to safe distance." Supreme Coordinator Zexhul watched the human fleet retreat with satisfaction. His cybernetic battle analysis programs had correctly predicted this outcome. Organic minds could not compete with networked artificial intelligence in complex tactical situations. "The humans are abandoning their station," reported war analyst Nexvera. "Our victory is assured. We have proven that the Corvani defeat was simply the result of primitive technology." "Continue the assault," Zexhul ordered. "Document everything for analysis. This data will be invaluable when we expand our operations to other human territories." But as the Hegemony ships closed in on the defenseless space station, something began to change in the space around them. The stars themselves seemed to flicker, and strange energy readings appeared on sensors that had never detected anything like them before. Supreme Coordinator, called Strategic Controller Vexthon, his mechanical voice carrying an unusual note of uncertainty, "We are detecting massive energy buildups throughout this system. The source appears to be everywhere and nowhere." On Luna Base, Dr. White placed her hand on the final activation control, Prometheus system fully charged and ready for deployment. "All personnel prepare for reality distortion effects." She pressed the control, and 50,000 kilometers away, the fundamental laws of physics began to change. The Hegemony fleet suddenly found their adaptive shields failing, not because they were being overwhelmed, but because the energy attacking them existed in dimensions their computers could not process. The weapons that struck them were not made of matter and energy as the universe normally understood these concepts, but of something deeper and more fundamental. "Impossible," Zexhul whispered as he watched his most advanced warships simply begin to dissolve, not destroyed by explosions or torn apart by weapons, but unraveled at the quantum level as their atomic structure was gently persuaded to stop existing. "Supreme Coordinator," Nexvara called out in growing panic, "our computers cannot analyze this technology. It operates according to principles that our science does not recognize." One by one, the Hegemony ships faded from existence like mirages in the desert. Their crews felt no pain, experienced no violence. They simply ceased to be as if they had never been born. The technology was so advanced that it could selectively edit reality itself, removing specific objects from the universe while leaving everything else completely untouched. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Hegemony invasion fleet had been politely asked to stop existing, and the universe had complied. Supreme Coordinator Zexhul found himself alone in space, his flagship the only vessel remaining. Even his cybernetic enhancements could not process what he had just witnessed. The humans had not defeated his technology. They had transcended it entirely. "This is Admiral Tony Martinez of the Human Defense Fleet," came a voice over his communication system. "Supreme Coordinator Zexel, you are the sole survivor of your invasion force. We offer you the same choice we offered the Corvani Empire. Surrender and learn to live peacefully, or continue this conflict and face complete extinction." Zexel tried to respond, tried to threaten or negotiate or demand explanations, but no words came. He had built his entire existence around the belief that superior technology could overcome any opponent. Now he faced beings who could rewrite the laws of reality itself. He began, his mechanical voice failing for the first time in decades. "I surrender." The Hegemony Collective surrenders completely. The transmission ended, and Zexel's ship was gently guided to Centauri Station by invisible forces that his sensors could not even detect. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's second demonstration of overwhelming power spread like wildfire. But this time, the reaction was different from the response to the Corvani defeat. The Corvani had been defeated by advanced but comprehensible technology. The hegemony had been defeated by something that seemed to operate outside the known laws of physics. Ambassador Paul Richards stood before the Galactic Confederation once again, but now the great assembly hall was filled with a silence that felt almost religious. Representatives from hundreds of species stared at him with expressions that mixed awe, terror, and profound respect. "Fellow representatives," Paul began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. 10 years ago, humanity revealed that our choice to live peacefully was exactly that, a choice. Today, we have been forced to reveal that our previous demonstration of military capability was itself a form of restraint. The elderly Crystalline Union representative, Crystal Singer Velnara, spoke in a voice that trembled with barely contained fear. "Ambassador Richards, the technology you employed against the hegemony, it appeared to violate the fundamental laws of reality. How long have humans possessed such power?" Paul was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "We have possessed this technology for 20 years. We hoped never to use it. We prayed that no species would force us to reveal that our mercy toward the Corvani was not the limit of our capabilities, but an example of our restraint." A reptilian representative from the Saurian collective hissed in amazement. "If humans have possessed reality-altering weapons for 2 decades, why did you not use them to reshape the galaxy according to your desires?" "Because reshaping the galaxy was never our desire," Paul replied. "We wanted friends, not subjects. We wanted cooperation, not domination. We wanted to build something beautiful together, not rule through fear." He activated the main display, showing images from across human space. Colonies where dozens of different species worked together. Research stations where alien and human scientists made discoveries that benefited everyone. Trade routes that brought prosperity to peaceful worlds throughout the galaxy. "This is what we have always wanted," Paul said. "This is what we will continue to want. But let there be no doubt among any of you. Humanity will never again allow aggressive species to threaten the innocent." The Corvani Empire learned this lesson through the loss of their military capability. The Hegemony Collective learned it through the loss of their entire invasion fleet. Supreme Coordinator Zexhol, now a prisoner aboard Centauri Station, was brought before a human tribunal to face judgment for his crimes. But instead of the harsh military court he expected, he found himself in a room filled with diplomats, scientists, and teachers. "We could unmake your entire species," Admiral Martinez told him bluntly. "We could edit the Hegemony Collective out of existence as easily as we removed your invasion fleet. But that has never been our way." Dr. Amanda Carter, now elderly but still leading humanity's interspecies research programs, leaned forward in her chair. "Coordinator Zexel, your people replaced their organic parts with machines because you believed that logic and technology were superior to emotion and biology. You were wrong." "How?" Zexhul,